Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
This is episode 23 of the FAB podcast on Wisp Sports Radio.
Excuse me.
The FAB podcast is the weekly show brought to you by Females in Athletic Business for women in the sports business, where we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage. Welcome to this week's episode. My name is Kristin Ray, and I'm the founder of Females in Athletic Business and one of your hosts of the FAB podcast. This week's guest is Meghan Ziehmer, Associate Director for the Greater Lansing Sports Authority in Lansing, Michigan. She is also a certified tourism ambassador and has her degree in communication from Michigan State University. She's here to talk to us about one of the sides of the sports industry that doesn't get a lot of attention, which is sports tourism. Welcome, Meghan.
Thanks for having me, Kristin.
Absolutely. So before we get into all the questions I have for you about your side of the industry, take a second to talk about your journey in sports. And then, because I know a little bit about your journey personally, I know you have an interesting part of your story about how persistence really pays off when looking for opportunities. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, first, I graduated from Michigan State University at the turn of the economy when companies really weren't looking at jumping at the opportunity to hire new people. So I grew up as a rink rat and a figure skater. So naturally, I coached my way through college, and I was a nanny for a family of four to kind of help pay my bills. When I was getting ready to graduate, I was talking to a coaching friend of mine, and he kind of said, what are you going to do with your life? You can't stay around this rink forever, and you can't continue to nanny a family. And I kind of told him, I said, I really enjoy helping people. I love sports. I love organizing. At the time, I was working at the rink in the club that I was a part of to help them with all of their competitions and their shows that they were doing. And I just said, I really like organizing things. I like being involved in that side of the business. So he had told me about a gentleman by the name of John Young who worked for the Greater Lansing Sports Authority. And I had absolutely no idea who the Sports Authority was or what they did. But I quickly found out. I jumped on their website, found out that they had some events. And naturally, I, reached out to John and, did this thing that most students nowadays do, reach out, tell him a little bit about myself. I really want to get involved in the industry. Would you be willing to meet with me? And naturally, being that he was busy with what he was doing, I didn't even receive a response. Mm-hmm. So I kept pushing. I figured I needed to figure out a way to get in front of him. So I went back on their website and I saw that they were hosting an event. And so I volunteered for the event because I figured what better way to get myself in front of him and let him know that I really wanted to be a part of the organization or part of what he was doing than being in the trenches with him.
Right.
So I volunteered. I volunteered for his event and, positioned myself so that when he took a break, I snuck over to the volunteer hospitality room and I was able to sneak in a few words with him and talk to him a little bit about what he was doing and, how he got into the industry and whatnot. Shortly after, they had an opening for an intern position. And so I applied and didn't receive a call back or anything. So I just kept pushing and kept reaching out to him. And actually, unbeknownst to me, a couple people that I had been working with in the skating industry had sent over some letters of recommendation to him without telling me. So it was about a month later, and I was obviously pretty bummed out that I hadn't received a call, but I kept going out to different partners in our community, the Michigan High School Athletic Association, different groups at Michigan State's campus, just kind of talking to people and how they got to where they were at. And randomly walking down the road one day, I received a call that they had a change of staffing and asked if I would come in and chat with them a little bit. So when I went in and went to talk to him about the position, he kind of just told me that my persistence and getting myself out there and volunteering and, continuing to reach out, even though he wasn't reaching back to me, is kind of what got me the position that I'm in now. So now 10 years later, I was hired as an intern. Ended up getting hired full-time shortly after he left, and I took his position as a sports events manager. And now I am the associate director with the Greater Lansing Sports Authority. So persistence really does pay off.
Persistence pays off, but also I like the part of your story that revolves around volunteerism, because there are so many young people who I talk to who are just like, where's my first job? Where's my first internship? But we shouldn't look past the smaller 1-2 day opportunities throughout the school year, throughout the summer. that can really not only boost your resume experience-wise, but really get you, in the face of the people that eventually might hire you. So I think that's a good message for our listeners too, for those of us who are, looking for a new opportunity or looking for their first opportunity. Volunteerism is a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that you'll find too, especially with, I hire interns all the time. And one of the things that people get frustrated about is that we want people that have experience, but we're not giving them the opportunity. Well, getting out there and volunteering, you can put that on your resume. And I think some students and people don't realize that is a great way to boost your resume and get that experience and see if the sports industry is even what you really want to be a part of.
That's great advice. So let's talk about what a sports authority or what a sports commission does before we get too far into maybe more of your role or more about sports tourism, because you said at the time you didn't even really know what the role of a sports commission was. So talk a little bit about that and what their role is in cities throughout our country and in the sports industry.
Well, I can start by telling you that all sports commissions or sports authorities are very different in the way that they operate. So with that said, the Greater Lansing Sports Authority, we are considered a full service sports commission. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But the main role of a sports commission or a sports authority is to promote economic growth and sports tourism in your area by supporting and attracting a diverse range of sporting events to your region. So like I said, we are a full service sports commission. So we work with our local sporting clubs and organizations to promote the events that they have. But then what we also do is we work with them to then go out and solicit larger events. So for example, just because I know that doesn't really make much sense, I know that Mia Corsini with US Figure Skating was on a podcast earlier. And so here locally, we partner with our local skating club, the Lansing Skating Club, and we have for years in supporting their annual competition. But after we built a strong partnership and we really got that structure in place, we went to them and presented some opportunities to bid on some larger events through US Figure Skating. So what sports commissions then do is they then partner with their local clubs and they bid on some larger events, and then like a regional championship, a sectional championship, or even a national championship. And they work as a partnership to put that bid together and then hopefully host that larger event in their community. So a full service sports commission works in the thicket of it with these organizations. So they do anything from putting together the bid, working with the facilities, the hotels, local referrals, helping recruit volunteers, helping with the scheduling of the event, soliciting sponsorships. So we really do a wide variety of things with the events in our communities.
So on any given day, the people you're interacting with in terms of clients or partners would be local sports clubs like a gymnastics club where you send your kid, or the figure skating club where you send your kid. But also local hotels in the area, maybe local restaurants in the area, but also like national or regional governing bodies of different sports. So USA Figure Skating, USA Gymnastics, things like that. Those are the kind of people you're talking to bring their events into town.
Absolutely. You typically start local and then you work your way out into the national scene. So you do have your national governing bodies, like you mentioned, US Figure Skating, USA Gymnastics, Archery. But then there are other groups out there that we call events rights holders or event owners that are groups that may not be associated with the USOC or those national governing bodies, but they're groups that, own and operate their own events. So you're talking about the Spartan races. You're talking about various lacrosse organizations that are out there. So there are people out there that also just own and operate their own events that may not be associated with the national governing body, and we're working with them as well.
So that clears that up for those of us who weren't super familiar with what a sports commission does. Talk about some of the other roles within these sports commissions, other positions that careers, I guess, within working for a sports commission. So you're the associate director. So I know there are salespeople, right? And there are event specialists. Talk a little bit about all the work you can do for a sports commission.
Well, there's a wide variety. I mean, obviously, we have an executive director who's obviously looking at the big picture and strategic planning. But within our organization, I can speak to, obviously, because I've been a part of it for so long, but they look at we're very involved in the community. We are resources. We're for facility development, facility growth. So we look at some of those things. But then, of course, obviously, as you mentioned, with sales, we do have a sales person. Some sports commissions have a sales team. We are a smaller group. There's only 4 of us that are full-time. So we have one salesperson. So he's out selling, working with those national governing bodies and events owners to prove why our region or the region that you're working for is the one or should be a fit for the event that you're talking about. We do have event specialists. I am personally the associate director, but part of my role is for those larger events, NCAA championships, national championships. We have what's called an LOC or a local organizing committee. And so my role or a role within an organization is to take those larger events and own and operate them. So you're in charge of all aspects of the event from the time that you sign that contract through event execution. You're pulling together all of the pieces, volunteers, scheduling, sponsorships, food, hospitality, ticket sales, everything. So we do have event specialists. We have some organizations also have service managers who their role is to support those smaller events that may not, they know how to operate on their own, but they may need local referrals. They need help securing a facility. They need help reaching out to the hotels and securing hotel rates for their athletes and their coaches. They need welcome information. Those people put together welcome bags or welcome gifts for coaches and athletes. Some of them need event signage, and we'll connect them locally with the folks in our community that do that or solicit quotes for different things. And then obviously a lot of organizations have marketing people. We put together a lot of our own marketing pieces, and we do it for some of our groups that we work with as well. We also have interns that are working on, putting together those welcome bags, doing the event logistics, setting up, tearing down, out doing social media, taking photos. So there's kind of a wide variety. The other interesting thing is that most sports commissions, if not all sports commissions, are nonprofits. So part of what we do is we don't charge for our services. So our services are completely free to our clients.
So then tell us how do you make your money then? How does the organization make money?
Well, that's interesting because each organization is different. So with us specifically, here with Greater Lansing, we are part of our Convention and Visitors Bureau. We are a nonprofit. So we are funded primarily through the bed tax. So that's why sports tourism is so important, because we're bringing these people in to spend money in our community. So all of these athletes are here for a 4-day tournament. Obviously, they need to stay somewhere. So when you stay at a hotel, whether you realize it or not, you pay a tax. And that tax, then a portion of that goes back to help fund us. But the interesting thing that's really neat about working for a sports commission is that you look at some of these national championships that are making $20,000 to $50,000 profit, and you're thinking, okay, well, you're making a profit. Who gets that profit? The fun thing about what we do is that profit then goes back to that local club that we work with to help them fund future endeavors.
So that was my next question is why is working for a sports authority so important for the cause of the region or of the city? And I think you mentioned that it brings events in that, wouldn't necessarily have thought to go to that city. So, when the city of Lansing, for instance, is bidding on a big event like the National Gymnastics Regionals that could be in any city in the Midwest, bringing it to Lansing is revenue that it wouldn't have had if the sports authority hadn't been working to bring that event to the city. And it's not just the money that, the $10 that somebody might have to pay to watch that event, but it's every hotel room that's being used for that event, all the restaurant revenue that people are using while they're in town. So it really is bringing business to a city that wouldn't always have been there before, right?
Absolutely. The thing that's kind of interesting about sports tourism is that people don't realize how large of an industry it truly is. And people, always say to us, well, why? Why are you doing this for free? Why, what are you trying to get from us? What do you want from us? It's, it's kind of hard to actually, people don't understand it. It takes a long time for them to really grasp it. But one of the interesting things about it is that the majority of people that are running those local sports organizations, they're volunteers. So when you think about the sports that you were involved with as a kid, or the thing that your kids are involved with, one of the main ways that you get involved in something is because, my son's really passionate about hockey. So I became, I'm on the hockey board or the booster club. And so they get involved. So they're working a 9-to-5 job. They're taking care of their families, running their kids around, and then they're doing this on top of it. So that's kind of where we come in. We understand that people are volunteers. We understand that these organizations, a lot of them have small budgets, and the only way that they can grow those budgets is by fundraising. And frankly, who wants to sell candles or pizzas? No offense to those organizations, but you're not making a lot of money that way. So what better way than to utilize the resources that you have and run a larger event? So that's kind of where we come in. We kind of, when we partner with our organizations, typically we start, like I said, we start local. We start with what they're already doing and showcase that we want to support them. And then we build that partnership that shows, okay, you can trust us. Here we are. We're here to help you. Let's partner on this larger event and let us do the work. We don't want the money. You guys take all the profits. Obviously, you're going to help us through that process, but let us be an extension of your staff. And then in turn, what do we get? Yes, people are staying in our hotels. Our facilities are being booked. They're buying at our concession stands. They're filling up at our gas stations. They're eating in our restaurants. And the thing that's really interesting is that as the economy turned, one of the things, people were cutting out family vacations and they were trying to, really watch their pennies. But what you noticed about the sports tourism industry is that people weren't cutting out those sporting events for their kids. They were still traveling. They were turning their kids' baseball tournament into their family vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. They're doubling up to save money.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're finding out is that a report just recently came out from 2017 that direct spending associated with the sports events industry, and this is not including professional sports. So this isn't talking about going to the Detroit Lions or going to the, a Tigers game. This is solely talked about amateur athletics and talked about youth sporting events. The sporting events industry was an $11.4 billion industry. Wow. So $11.4 billion is spent in various communities throughout the country with sports tourism. That's a 9% increase from 2016, which was $10.47 billion.
So that was going to be my next question is this industry one that you think is safe to get into in terms of its growth?
Absolutely.
And it sounds like absolutely. So how big of a city, these sports commissions aren't in every city, which is why a lot of people don't know about them. So you have to kind of go to a major metropolitan area to have one. Is that kind of where we're at right now?
Yes and no. Lansing is considered a tier 2 city, but it really just depends on what you have available to you in your cities. And you got to get creative. Not every community has a 20-court basketball facility that they can manage, or a 10 baseball diamonds all at one complex. It's really about utilizing what you have in your community and getting creative.
Okay. So just speaking as an employee of the industry, what are some of the best parts work culture wise about working in the industry, and what kind of lifestyle perks does the job have?
Well, I think one of the things is that every day is completely different. Working with a sports commission as compared to working for any other organization, you're working with so many different people and so many different sports. And so you're always learning something new, which is really exciting personally for me. And I don't just sit at a desk every day. I get to go out and see, archery, or we just held the high school clay league target national championships. Clay shooting. I never even realized that was a sport before I worked here. So that's really interesting in seeing all of these different things and being able to see all these non-traditional sports that are coming up, and realizing that our kids don't have to be a basketball player, soccer player to, still be involved in sports. So that's a really neat part and perk of the job. What also is neat is that for me personally, the flexibility that the industry offers, because you are working a lot of nights and weekends, but also you're constantly working. So a lot of our clients are, like I said, they're volunteers. So we're getting calls into the evening or on our weekends. So there is that little bit more flexibility during the day because of that. So, but that's us personally here that's not across the board at every single sports commission.
Right. Your office is very flexible because you work overtime, if you will. You work nights and weekends. Your office happens to be very flexible about how you handle your time during the day. So you can't say that for everyone in the industry, but that's just your experience. So hopefully, if anyone's listening that didn't know about this part of the industry, we've created some interest, hopefully. So how can young women find out where their nearest sports commission is or what openings they might have at those sports commissions?
I think the best place would be to go to the National Association of Sports Commissions, which is sportscommissions.org. That is kind of our hub from a sports commission standpoint that all of us are a part of. We get together once a year at our annual conference, and there's about 900 to 1,000 people that come there. So a lot of those jobs are posted right there on their website. And you can see a list of all of the members of the organization. And that's also a great outlet for all those events rights holders and national governing bodies. So the sports commissions is a great side, but then there's also that leverage into the national governing body and events holder side, which is also on that website, National Association of Sports Commissions, sportscommissions.org.
Okay, and I will link that website to this podcast episode. So if you're listening and you're interested, we'll put that link out there too. So Meghan, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited about getting the information, and I'm very passionate about this side of the industry because I've worked on the hotel side. So I've worked with you before about, on different things within this city. So I'm so passionate about people getting to know this part of the industry because I think there are so many opportunities. So again, thanks for being here today to talk about it. And before we let you go, tell our Michigan listeners specifically how they can keep in touch with the Greater Lansing Sports Authority if they're interested in knowing kind of what's going on there.
We too have a website. It's lansingsports.org. Again, that's lansingsports.org. And you can follow us on social media. We do have a Facebook page that we're pretty engaged with. Or you can find my contact information right on the website and feel free to reach out to me directly.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Meghan. And hopefully we'll be working together soon on some other things for females in athletic business.
Thanks for having me, Kristin.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
Wisp Sports Radio can be found on any podcast app and follow Wisp Sports on social media at Wisp Sports. Please give us a 5-star review on iTunes to help promote coverage of women in sport. To follow Females in Athletic Business or this podcast, use @FAB_Sports.org on social media. The FAB podcast is a co-production of Females in Athletic Business and Wisp Sport. Check Females in Athletic Business out at www.fabsportsorg.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with our second installment of our Women of the Big Ten Network series.